Well, there you are. Again, Charlie Greer Podcast today. So, club gigging in LA. Not before we do. Please like, share, and subscribe if you want to support the channel. The information's in the description for Cash App. My handle is Charlie Greer Podcast. Let's do this. So, club gigging in LA. Yes, I've gigged in clubs in LA. If you're gonna do like shitty, uh, no, not you just throw away gigs in club. You might the best place to do it is in LA. Don't fool yourself. People, oh, I'm playing. It's but you have moments of genius and magic, and then like despair and misery. I'm talking about playing in clubs in LA. But yeah, club gigging in LA. Pardon me. LA is like probably my favorite place I've ever played. And we're talking about LA spread all over the place. And some of the worst gigs in LA are better than some of the best gigs back wherever the fuck you know. Again, you every once in a while you play with like a cool band or meet a hero or something like that. I'd recommend if you're meeting a hero, don't go tell them that they're a hero or somebody you respect or something like that. Don't say anything. They tend to like turn on you. And so the last round of gigs I did in Los Angeles, because I've been retired for like over 10 years. I had by then I'd sold most of my like really good gear. I knew better to gig with. Yeah, you don't want to anyway. So you need like road dog shit that's just good enough that'll hold up, so you figure out like, hey, what is this? Because some of the things that I would gig with the last set of gigs I did back in the day before that, I always had like a really nice Les Paul, like a high-end Les Paul. And I did gig with the high-end Les Paul. But then again, you one night I almost left it anyway. So my rig. So now what I'm talking about here is when my last CD came out, Turn Me On Dead Man, and that came out in 2008. And I did a gigging cycle for a couple of years for that. I did from like probably 2010, 2011, maybe. I was still gigging, and I was going to release another album. I said, no, I'm tired of, retire. So I found these at the time. They were silver tone Les Pauls. Come to find out, they were actually designed by Paul Stanley of Kiss. He had licensed or bought the name Silvertone. Anywho's these Les Pauls were decent enough to get by, and I could get them for like $100, $150. I knew a shop in Highland Park, and they had bought a bunch of them, and so I literally went through because I was breaking the necks on them, and one of them that I broke the neck, and then they repaired it. Sound better once I got it back. I don't know what that's all about, and played better too. And you couldn't tell unless you looked behind the neck. But man, it just sounded so dense and fierce after they fixed the neck. And that was my favorite one, the one that I had broke. But and I don't even know what happened to that one. So I had those. I had these Silvertone Les Pauls. I forgot the model of it. It's got a shorter horn than a Les Paul. You could either got them in like Sunburst or Tobacco Burst. I had both, And I literally went through, had to be 10 of them. Some of them I'd swap out the pickups because the original pickups were kind of phonicky, they would feedback. Some of them wouldn't. So I'd throw in like a Seymour Duncan JB. And so I was using these Les Pauls, Silvertone Les Pauls. And then I got a hold of a Fender Super 210. It's a 60-watt tube, 210-inch speakers. It's the Red Knob series. So those were around like late 80s, early 90s. They're made from a Paul Revere schematic. Like he wasn't working at Fender then, but he had worked for Fender like in the late 70s, early 80s. So this was a design he had that they didn't use. And once they fired him or whatever, and then he started Revere amps and he's popping off, they're like, well, let's just bring these out. One of the best amps, in my humble opinion, ever, because I put this thing through the paces. And so it's a 210 combo, 60 watt, 2 channel. Actually had a gain channel on it. That some people were like, it's unusable. Man, I thought it sounded great. I mean, granted, I'm cranking it though. Maybe at bedroom volumes it would sound, but shit, I would just. And it had 2 inputs. The first input was not. If you're going to that second input, I don't know what it was. It sounded like, I don't know, they were different. So the one input, anyway, I would just, that's what I use. I would crank. It was 60 watt tube, loud. I'd go to a club and I tell them, like, don't even mic it. I'm gonna run it stereo, 2 mic. No, just don't even. Just let me do. So I had, and technically that's kind of cheap gear, not the Fender, but these Silvertone. People are like, after the gig, like, what are you playing? It's like, well, I mean, it's what works, and I know that I'm either gonna lose this guitar, it's gonna get stolen, I'm gonna break the neck. I'm tired of going through like good gear. I need something that I can like road dog and have like, if I break one, just grab another. So that was like my gear rundown. I didn't have a backup amp. If it blew, I would actually have to stop the gig or borrow one of the bands we're playing with. I've done gigs where I just showed up and like use other people's gear. I wouldn't recommend that. That's kind of, but at the time I was not doing too well. But, and then the first cycle of that run around of gigs went well. Had to get rid of the band. See, you're always getting rid of, you can't keep a band. It's hard to keep a band together anywhere, let alone LA. And then people have opportunities and, and quite honestly, people get the big head. They're begging you to be in your band. Oh, I want to be in your band. It's 6-7 months later. They're acting all, like I can't handle that, or trying to like be the pirate of the ship. And it's just like, dude, this is, like I just met you, where's the dude that I met like 6 months ago that was cool, and or they overdose or whatever. Pardon me. And so I was always putting like I had a rotating door policy for my band. I wish I could have kept the same dudes, one for all and all for one. No, that's not gonna. And there were some guys that would I'm not going to name any names, but some people in bigger bands like what I was doing, but there's no money in what I was doing. But creatively, they're like, oh, wow. Because a lot of these people are, I wouldn't call scabs, but there's people that aren't the original members of bands, but they make a lot of money touring with a bigger band. And, I get it, so they want like creative stuff on the side that maybe might have a chance to, do something. So again, I'm not going to name names, but this guy contacted me and I forgot how he might have been through MySpace, because back then it was MySpace. And I had a buzz going around, I was gigging around, and he contacted me and I was like, oh, wow. And he was like in a major band. He wasn't the original. He was a drummer. He wasn't the original guy, but he was making good money and touring the world. Oh, dude, I love your music. When I have off time, I would love to So he just had some off time, like 3 to 6 months, whatever. And he wanted to do it like a side thing, creative. And I was kind of shocked that he, because what I was doing wasn't what he was doing. Like the big band he was in was more like mainstream, and here I am like 3-chord rock. But man, he was really digging what I was doing, and so I'm on the phone. Oh yeah, it's just, oh my god. And I was always suspicious. Like, why the fuck would you? How did you? I saw you at wherever. So and this is a warning. This is why I'm telling this yarn, if you will. Yeah, I want to. But then again, I have to say, look, we got to try you out. I know you're Mr. Studio Musician, this, that, and the other, but it might not. Let's just get in a rehearsal hall and kick out the jam. See if we, So he's like, okay, yeah, fine, I will. And so we meet. He's talking on the phone, and then we decide like, okay, since it's my band, and to keep the control, control of the whole matter, I'll pay for the rehearsals. I always was like that. If it's my solo band, I pay for rehearsals. And I can't pay you, and I'll buy the beer and the Taco Bell or whatever the fuck, but I'll pay for the room. And rehearsal rooms in LA the cheap ones are cheap, but they're not that cheap. Cheapest I've ever found was like 15 an hour, but you had to do 2 hours, minimum 2 hours. So 15, 2 hour, $30, bam. And I would do that like 3 times a week. So that's like $120 a week. And I'd be in pre-production, if you want to call it that, for like a couple months just to get my band up to snuff, because you're going to be seen. You don't want to be out there, like a bunch of schmendricks. So I picked Amp in North Hollywood. And he's like, oh yeah, Amp. An Amp is, there's layer, smaller rooms, huge rooms. He's like, I want the big room. I'm like, the big room? That's like a lot of money. No, I insist. I want to be, I'm a professional. I should have known right then. I should have told him to go fuck himself. And I told him, I said, dude, that's like $100 an hour. That's like going to be like $200 out of my pocket, No, it'll be worth it. Again, this guy in my mind is a scab. I don't care how much money he has. He's never done anything on his own. He coattail rides off bigger bands. There's a shit ton of dudes like that. I take my hat off to him, actually. It's like a love-hate thing. I respect them, but it's like, yeah. So I booked the gig. Now here's the thing. You got to pay with a credit card, and you got to book it in advance. So you've got the room. It's paid for. So when you go there, there is no, so it's paid for. I think it was going to be like on a Saturday or a Sunday. And I got suspicious because he called me up the night before. And he wanted to do it early, because I think it was like 10 or 11, which in band world, that might as well be 4 in the morning. So he's like, yeah, let's do it early. He called me as I was about to go to bed the night before at like midnight, 1 o'clock, ossified, and at a party. I don't know if he was having the party at his place. I think it was his place. Pardon me. And he was talking me up, but I could tell he'd been doing God knows what. I could hear my music in the background. They were playing my EP. People are loving this, man. I go, bro. In like less than, are you gonna be okay for tomorrow? Like, I kind of kept it easy tonight. I didn't, no, I'm a pro. I was like, dude, don't fuck me over. No, I'd never, shit. It's like, because I already paid the $200. It might even been more. It might have been $300. I don't know. It was the biggest room. It's downstairs, 2 levels of amp. It's downstairs. It's the huge one. It's the one with the window. It's got a separate studio thing for if you want to record in there, whatever. It's got a drum kit in it that's really nice, and it's got amps. It's got like a Marshall stack, a Fender Twin. It's got everything. The back line is there, and this is the big room, so it's nice. I think they actually had 2 Marshall stacks. Half stacks, that is, and a couple twins. You can pick what you want, and they have like an Ampeg SVT bass, But I was like, man, you need to call it a night and like get some sleep. Don't get too, nah, I'm fine. And I could hear people in the back. He was like putting people on the phone, like, dude, you sound awesome, all this stuff. I was like, yeah, well, get some sleep. So what happens the next day? I get there, dude blows me off. He didn't show. So I'm there in like for 2 hours. Like, I went through my set. I was like, might as well while in Rome. And in certain rooms, you can record. They have these it's like a rack system. If you bring in a CD at the time of CDs, it's burnable CD. You could record what you're doing. So I did. I recorded, like a little solo thing. He didn't show. Never heard from him. No, like, oh, I'm sorry. Nothing. Oh, he did later on. Like, oh, bro, you were right. I should have done that last line or whatever. So that's the kind of shit that you have to. That's one of the reasons why I retired. I've done that for so long and dealing with other people's bullshit, this, that, and the other. And a lot of times, the worst scenario, they blame you for something they've done. Oh, he's an asshole. It's like, what? I'm just dealing with your bullshit. And he did reach it. By then, he's still like one of these, So you have to deal with that kind of stuff. Another time during this period, right around the same time, I'm not going to name any names, but I was like, I'll say this. He was in the Rock City Angels. And the Rock City Angels are like a really good band back in the day. They were kind of like a Guns N' Roses. Johnny Depp was in Rock City Angels for a period back in the 80s. And then they got signed. They were on Geffen, and then they recorded like one album for Geffen, and then they were a bunch of junkies. Good. They're a great band. Matter of fact, check out Rock City Angels. But their bass player, I'm not going to name his name. Their bass player, again, reached out to me. And I was like, yeah, Rock City Angels. Hey, man, And this is the thing. The guy was cool. And even up front was like, dude, I'm not doing that well. But I'm looking to get my shit together and be in a band, and I thought, okay, I still got connections. I could get Johnny Depp at the gig, that kind of shit. So I was like, all right, but I was like, you're gonna have to, let's meet. Like, usually I'd have people come to my apartment. We had a studio set up in the living room. And so yeah, I'll we made a date. Again, it probably was like Saturday or Sunday. And he shows up. Now he's not in the best. And this was, again, early in the day, maybe like noon, 1 o'clock. Sunny, beautiful Hollywood day. Or North Hollywood, I should say. He's like, I'm here, So I went out, we lived in like this condominium complex. Went out there. He's got his bass and he's just sweating and like, and complaining that he had to take like buses and trains to get there. And I was like, bro, why didn't you? And he said, I had to walk from the train. So I was like, why didn't you call? I would have picked you up. You'd have to walk, at least from the train station. No, man, I'm a road dog and carrying this big hard shell case with a bass in it. And he'd been drinking. He'd already, hot sun. He's like sweating like a, again, he was a cool guy. Just circumstances. He told me up front, dealing with me, no vacation kind of thing. So, hey, do you have any Jack Daniels or beer? We're like, well, we probably have both, but fine, let's just have a beer. He has to cool down. Like, can you turn on the air conditioner? And he was like, looked like he's had like heat stroke and sweating, and he's all tatted out. Like, he just looks like he was in the Rock City Angels. What do you expect? So, but I liked him. And my roommates at the time, they were like, oh, yeah, so-and-so from Rock City Angels. He's telling us all these stories and how Geffen messed him over. Then it was like, well, let's just jam. Once we got a few beers in him and he cooled down. And I was shocked at his condition. Now, again, he had warned me that he hadn't been playing and this, that, and the other. So we started playing. Oh, and that's another thing. He had... He should know my songs. That's another thing that I do. It's like, dude, I'm past the point of like teaching you my songs. I'll give you an EP. You can go on MySpace. Whatever. My songs were online. You could, I had a website. I think it wasn't like a mystery. And not to be rude, but it's just like, show up and know the songs. they're fucking simple songs. It's just like 3-chord rock and roll. I mean, he kind of knew the songs, but his playing, see, a bass has to be ba da da da. You have to like this steady kind of backbeat. You got to get the. He was sporadic at best. Um, and we stopped. He was like, "Dude, I'm sorry. Come on, we can, And he just also he was doing stage moves. That's embarrassing because we were in my living room and my roommates were there, and I think there was other friend there, and they all kind of like, I was like, you don't have to, perform. We're just, I'm playing through a practice amp here. He'd be like, okay, and he kept on doing it, which was kind of cool. I mean, people were like, so he was like, I'm so sorry, but I gave him the gig. I was like, I get it. You're rusty. I have gigs coming up. You're in the band. And I think that I had Mikey Mayhem on drums at the time. I had a drummer. But I was like, you'd start coming over and we'll do this same like living room jam, where you're standing up and you're going to this. And he did get a little better, but he would always show up. I think he was on the methadone program. I shouldn't say, but he and drinking. So he was always a little bit out there. But then again, I wasn't doing that well either. But I wasn't that, shit. I was a wild man at the time, but I wasn't like that. I had enough to keep it together where I had like a CD out. I don't know how many times he came over because he was in the band for a couple months, and or was it a month? Because I know that when I fired him because when we moved it to Amp back at Amp rehearsal, because I'd usually just like do a kind of unformed, just like kind of a small gig. And by the time I'm paying for rehearsals, I want to make sure that these are the guys that I'm going to be gigging with because I'm spending the money. So we moved to Amp. And I think he made it like through 1 or 2 rehearsals. I think the second one, when I just couldn't. The first one he came in, he literally stumbled and fell, like landed on his face, like just ossified, whatever he was on. And he always had Jack Daniels. And again, I like this guy. I mean, he was cool. He was charming. It's just that he, and talking to Moon about who he knew. And I knew he did know these people because he was on Geffen. Matter of fact, he'd gotten higher up than I did. At least he had a big major label. He had a promotion behind him back in I think that album came out in '88. And I like Rock City Angels. I listened to him. I was listening to him last week. But that's, and he's either Mikey. I forgot the drummer I had. It might have been Mikey Mann. I was like, dude, we can't, no. And I was like, yeah, you're right. And I told him after that, I was like, dude, this isn't working out. He's like, I'm sorry, no hard feelings. I hope that you're okay. Well, what are you going to do? What, I can't nurse someone back to health, And don't get me wrong. I was drinking at the time too and smoking weed like you would not believe. And, like every day. So it wasn't like I was a bubble gummer or some kind of like clean cut. No, and people pulled me aside like, dude, you gotta, but, I wasn't like, fall down on my face drunk. At least I was writing tunes and I had, and then I forgot who I got, that was an endless cycle that I never got out of. From the time out 98 until I quit gigging around 2010, 2011. Then I started teaching, but I never got out of that. That whole period was just always people dropping out of your band, usually right before an important gig. You're getting somebody off of the recycler, some drummer, bass, because I always needed a drummer and bass player. I was a 3-piece power trio. I played guitar and sang, bass player and drums. That's done. Plug in, no pedals, just rock. And it's just what I liked. It wasn't like we're changing the world or doing anything even unique or groundbreaking. It's just that we were sometimes we were, again, you have these sparks of genius, these sparks of magic, and then other times you just, you might have had a few beers too many, or a rough day, or a rough life. We were really hit and miss. So some people were like, man, they're great live. And other people saw us like, dude, they're the worst band. I get it. Just depending on what night you saw us. And I think a lot of bands are like that. Even famous bands. It just depends on how you catch them. But that cycle of just endless bullshit, endless aggravation of just like, oh my God, do I have to do I really want to do this anymore? Where I'm just, and seeing other no talent fuckers, at least I had a little bit of creativity. And scabs, like guys that like are coat-terrorizing off other bands, never done anything on their own. Again, I get that too, but I just couldn't do that. I had to do my own thing, play originals. I didn't want to play music that other people wrote. Doesn't mean I wouldn't do a cover or two, but if I played an hour, we might have played one cover. I've always been that way. Now, in the beginning, you do have to learn covers. Don't get me wrong. When you're learning, you're a cover band basically. But I never went down that cover band road. Matter of fact, I kind of regret it. I wish I'd have had like a side hustle as a cover band, because you can make money as cover bands. And I knew dudes that were in original bands. How they paid their rent and shit was they were in a fucking cover band out in the valley or somewhere that they didn't want people to know about. Which is what it is, Some gigs, again, they were great. You have a party at your place afterwards. Some gigs are just like the worst you've ever. You're breaking strings, your tubes blow on stage. You're in a fight with your girlfriend. People don't show up. You're playing with people that you don't even hardly know. You're doing a showcase for some label. Then it just beats you down. That's why I don't do it. If I would have had some kind of support system, like I ran my own little independent vanity label. I wouldn't release it to anybody else. Well, a friend, anyway. And if I did release, it would be like 100 or 200 copies, and I was usually involved in the project. So it was just what I did. No distribution. Again, I'm paying for everything. I'm managing the band. I'm the booking agent. I'm the everything. It wears you down. And I had a job at the time. I was like a photo editor. It's brutal. It is brutal. And playing on like weeknights when you have, sometimes I didn't have a job, but at this period I did. And everybody in that photo world I worked were drunks or recovering or doing something, this, that, and the other thing. So I fit right in. There's a lot of that in LA where it's just like, well, you're not any different than anybody else. You're not even as bad as some of these people. But good times. as I bellyache about some of this stuff. It was fun. Even going through that douchebaggery shit with that famous drummer guy, even with the Rock City Angels bass player guy, it still was, I was having fun. Yeah, it's aggravating. But you have to go to a situation where, like, enough and done. Like, I probably could have went, oh yeah, the drummer guy, the famous guy. Oh, don't worry about it. We'll continue. And I might have done. No, it's done. It's over with. Once gold turns black, there ain't no turning back, kind of thing. It's like I'm not that I'm pissed. It's just that I'm not going to waste my time anymore. I'm not going to look like a fucking And that guy, that drummer guy, actually did try to reach out later and want to pay me. I was like, I'm not taking your money. Then he went through some problems, and then he kind of came back, and he's back, I guess. I don't know about the Rock City Angel guy. I haven't heard from him. Who knows? Those guys were hardcore. He was hardcore. It's a shame that he, pardon me, and he had told me he'd been out of the loop. He had, he was way out of the loop. And when you're young and you're consistent, you could probably get by doing that on whatever you're on. And, hey, but if you have, like, say, a 10-year gap where you're not playing, and then your addictions have, like, accelerated, and then you try to get back, it ain't going to happen. You're going to be at best sporadic. So when you stand there and you're playing by yourself going, yeah, I could do this. And then you have to keep a 4/4, you're all over the place. And that's one thing that I demanded was we sound good. We have to, this is simple shit we're doing. We at least have to be in time. We have to, I don't want any of this, no, I couldn't. I'd fire a drummer or bass player. I just couldn't do it. We have to. You can't, you don't want to be seen, especially in Los Angeles. You don't want to be seen as like, oh God, his band sucks. I mean, that just, and that does happen. You're an off night. You drink too much. You're playing with someone you don't. Again, I've said this. I'm repeating myself, but it is what it is. I mean, again, it was fun. Some of those things I'd say wouldn't change, but it's life. It's being in a rock and roll band. It's rock and roll. And a lot of these people, bands, I should say, go through this, and they're famous bands. They still can't. They're always, I did a podcast a few weeks ago or a month ago, whatever, about Motley Crue. Well, they're still lawsuits and don't get along and only see each other on stage, and it's just rock and roll. What are you gonna do? And I would love to be in a cover band, but it'd have to be already established. And I kind of like I'd be the scab, like I'm stepping in for Joe Blow, because I wouldn't start anything from ground up with a band. There's no way. Oh, and I released 2 songs a couple weeks ago: Six Pack and a Toothbrush and Instrumental for Now. So go check those out. And I love y'all. Be blessed. Cheers.